Un, dos, tres, cuatro.
You know the quick service restaurant in the United States? You know, the one that has locations in almost every state? And when you get to the front of the line, you say, I'll have a bowl, maybe hard shell tacos, and give me some rice, maybe pinto or black beans. You struggle with the protein. I think there's only one protein choice if you're vegan. Then you'll say, I'll have some corn, salsa, and maybe the pico de gallo. Well, that place is serving chicken right now, flavored with chipotle and honey. So I thought I'd make a vegan version. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a chipotle maple soy curl bowl with lime cilantro rice and flavorful pinto beans, corn, and tomato salsas. I can't say this is a quick recipe since you're essentially making 5 different components to make one bowl, but it is an easy recipe in that each separate component is very easy to make and great for meal prep. In the morning while I had my coffee, I started to prepare the pinto beans. I took a 16-ounce bag of dried pinto beans and I placed them in a large bowl, and then I covered that bowl with water. And I also then covered the bowl with plastic wrap, and I allowed the beans to soak for 8 hours. I also sorted through the beans before I put the water in, and I picked out any stones that I found or any irregularities in the beans. I also then moved on to preparing the corn and tomato salsas. For the corn salsa, I started with 1 large poblano pepper, and I placed that on a small baking tray covered with foil, and I placed it in the broiler. The goal was to char the exterior of the pepper on both sides. After the skin of the pepper is charred on both sides, place it in a small bowl or container, and then cover that with plastic wrap and allow it to steam for about 10 minutes, and this will loosen the skin and allow you to take it off easily. While I set the poblano pepper aside, I warmed up a bag of frozen corn. I believe it was a 16-ounce bag of corn, and I warmed it in the microwave. I also de-seeded and diced 2 jalapeno peppers, and then I added those to the corn. I then cleaned and peeled a red onion, and I cut that in half, and then I diced that half and added it to the corn salsa. I then took a handful of cilantro, I'd say it was about a 1/4 cup, and I diced that and added that to the corn salsa. Then I added the juice of 1 lemon to the corn salsa, and then I just stirred everything together to combine. I then took the poblano pepper and I removed the skin. I have to say it's somewhat of a satisfying experience because the skin just comes off easily after charring the pepper and then steaming it for 10 minutes. I then de-seeded and diced the poblano pepper, and I added this to the corn salsa and again stirred everything well to combine all of the ingredients. I then covered the corn salsa with plastic wrap and I placed it in the fridge to allow the flavors to blend until dinner. To make the pico de gallo, or the tomato salsa, I took 1 pound of fresh tomatoes, I cleaned them, and then I de-seeded them and diced them. I then diced 1/4 of the red onion that remained from the corn salsa. And I added that to the diced tomatoes. Then I added the juice of about 1/2 of a lemon. It's about 1 tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons worth. Then I added about 1/2 teaspoon, maybe 3/4 teaspoon of salt. I then squeezed in 1 to 2 tablespoons worth of lime juice. I then took another handful of cilantro, again, maybe about quarter cup of cilantro, and then I diced that. And then I added that to the tomato salsa and I mixed everything together to incorporate all of the flavors. And as I did with the corn salsa, I put a plastic cover on the tomato salsa and placed it in the refrigerator to store until dinner. So the beans take about 15 minutes of prep time and about 1.5 hours to 2 hours of cooking time. So I started with 1 medium yellow onion and I cleaned the exterior and then skinned it, and then I diced that. I then added the onions to a large pot on the stove and I added 1 tablespoon of olive oil. If you don't want to use oil, you can just simply use about half a cup of water to saute the onions. I sauteed them for about 3 minutes until they became translucent and soft. I then peeled and diced 2 cloves of garlic, and after the onions cooked for about 3 minutes, I then added the garlic to the onions and I stirred that around to allow that to cook for about 1 minute. I then drained and rinsed the soaked pinto beans and I added those to the garlic and onion. I also added 1 bay leaf, about 1 teaspoon of oregano, and about 1 teaspoon of cumin. I then took a can of chipotle peppers with adobo sauce and I added 2 of the chipotle peppers and 2 teaspoons of the adobo sauce. I then added water to the beans. I added just enough to go slightly above the beans. And then what I did was I stirred everything around to incorporate all of the spices, and I then brought it to a boil. I then turned the heat down and simmered the beans for about 1.5 hours. As I was making the beans, it occurred to me I forgot to add 2 jalapenos to the tomato salsa. I then de-seeded and diced the 2 jalapenos that I had remaining, and I stirred those into the tomato salsa. I then covered the salsa again with the plastic wrap and put it back into the fridge to allow the flavors to blend until dinner. After the beans simmered for 1.5 hours, I checked on them and I just to test the doneness of the beans, and then I added 2 teaspoons of salt, and I also squeezed in the juice of 1 lemon and the juice of 1 lime, and I gave that all a good stir to incorporate the salt and the lemons and lime throughout the beans. I also then removed the bay leaf, and if you want, you can remove the chipotle peppers, but I just allowed those to remain in the beans. To make the rice, I used long grain rice, and I rinsed and strained that, and then I took 2 cups of the rice, and then I added that to 3 cups of water, and I also added a bit of olive oil, and I added a teaspoon of salt and 1 bay leaf. I stirred all the ingredients together and I brought the rice and water to a boil, and then I turned the pot down to medium and put a lid on it. I then allowed the rice to simmer for 20 minutes. So let's move on to making the main ingredient in this bowl. It's the Chipotle maple soy curls. And what you want to do is take 2 cups of soy curls. Keep in mind, this is for about 3 servings. So if you want more, I would double it or triple it if you need to. So put the soy curls in a bowl, and then you're going to want to cover the soy curls with water, sufficient enough to cover it about 1 inch above the soy curls because they need to rehydrate. Before I added the water, I decided to break apart some of the larger soy curls into smaller pieces. But after adding the water, you want to allow them to soak for 10 minutes. After allowing them to soak for 10 minutes, I then drained the water and then I squeezed out as much of the water as I could out of the soy curls, and I placed them back into a separate bowl to dry further while I made the marinade for the soy curls. For the Chipotle maple sauce for the soy curls, you want to start by peeling and placing 2 cloves of garlic into a mini food processor or blender. Then add the juice of 1 lime to the blender. Then add 2 to 3 chipotle peppers. The more the better, in my opinion. And you can also add about 1 to 2 teaspoons of the adobo sauce. Then I added 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And then I added 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. If you don't want it as sweet, just add 1 tablespoon. Then I blended all the ingredients together to create a smooth sauce. Then I poured the sauce over the soy curls, and then I also stirred the soy curls to allow the sauce to fully coat all of the soy curls. Before I moved on to actually cooking the soy curls, I finished up the rice. After cooking for 20 minutes, I turned off the heat, I allowed it to sit for 10 minutes, and then I took off the lid and I removed the bay leaf, and then I squeezed in the juice of 1 lime and mixed that around, and then I chopped about 1/4 cup of cilantro and I added that and stirred that into the rice as well. To cook the soy curls, you need a large skillet, and to that I added 1 tablespoon of olive oil and I heated it up, and after the oil was hot, I added the soy curls and distributed them throughout the skillet. You want to try to brown the soy curls evenly on all sides. I cooked the soy curls on medium heat for about 5 to 7 minutes to get a nice brown exterior on the soy curls. At this point, I was eager to plate my bowl. I started with a bed of the cilantro lime rice, and then I added the soy curls, and I added some pinto beans and the tomato and corn salsa. Everything blended so well together. The soy curls were absolutely delicious with a hint of the chipotle pepper and then a slight sweetness from the maple syrup. The pinto beans and the 2 salsas, the corn and tomato, are so reminiscent of what you get at that other place. The whole bowl together was absolutely delicious, and I continue to crave these Chipotle maple soy curls. Let me know in the comments if you try making any or maybe all of the components for this Chipotle and maple soy curl bowl. Also, check out these next videos. They'll give you some ideas for some more gluten-free and vegan recipes.